Howdy folks, welcome back to Boonedockery and part 2 of Boonedockery as Daniel Boone. I've decided to dress up today because today is a very special occasion. Not only are you going to get to see part 2 of my portion of Boone and Crockett the Hunter Heroes, but as of this morning I surpassed 25,000 subscribers. For once, I'm speechless. What started off as just something to do during the COVID lockdowns has really brought me into touch and in contact with so many wonderful people. I can't possibly imagine having been able to do all of this for all these years I've been doing it without the constant support, constant prayers, constant uplifting, and constant camaraderie that I receive from all my viewers, my subscribers, and I absolutely love being able to go through and connect with you through the comments. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I am incredibly happy to see that this video has been received so well. Through the comments from the first half and the number of views I have, I was really sort of hesitant as to even to do it, and I didn't really know how well it received it would be, but according to the numbers, you guys really liked it, and I'm very thankful for that. We're going to go ahead and get into part 2. I'm going to have a few bits of commentary at the end of the video, and I am going to reserve a good bit of it for a future video, so this one, it doesn't wind up being too long.
The murder of James Boone and his companions, although committed by renegade Indian outlaws, is blamed on the Shawnee, Delaware, and Cherokee nations. In April 1774, Lord John Murray of Dunmore, Royal Governor of Virginia, proclaims a state of war between the Virginians and the Indians and calls the militia to arm. Daniel Boone, commissioned a captain in this war, takes command of several border posts. On October 10, 1774, at Point Pleasant on the Ohio River, the Shawnees and Delawares are defeated by Dunmore's militia army. A fragile peace is concluded, with both sides simply seeking to buy time. Lord Dunmore's war inspires Judge Richard Henderson to a bold scheme. He will purchase Kentucky lands from the Cherokees and create a 14th colony in the wilderness, with himself as the grand proprietor. With Eastern authorities distracted by the colonial political crisis, Henderson makes his move on the most outrageous American real estate deal since the Dutch purchased Manhattan Island.
The Treaty of Sycamore Shoals is a classic case of mutual duplicity. On one hand, the Cherokee had no real ancestral claims to the land, nor did they have territorial claims to the land. They hunted the region, but that was about it. From the Anglo point of view, Henderson and his cronies were breaking all manner of crown law and colonial law.
Henderson hires Daniel Boone to arrange the treaty negotiations in March 1775. There, the Cherokees gladly sign a quitclaim to 20 million acres of Kentucky land in exchange for 10,000 pounds sterling worth of trade goods. No one is under any illusion as to the validity of the transaction. A Cherokee leader warns Boone.
Brother, we have given you a fine land, but I believe you will have much trouble in settling it.
The warrior's path into Kentucky is little more than a buffalo trace. Henderson sends Boone with 30 axemen to hack out a wagon road to the Kentucky River, some 112 miles away. There, they are to erect a fort for the protection of the rent-paying settlers Henderson hopes will follow. On April 1st, Boone and his men begin the construction of Fort Boonesborough on a salt lick some 60 yards south of the Kentucky River. Just 5 days before, the Shawnee had struck, killing 4 and wounding another. Boone hurries the construction, rallies the faltering spirits of his companions, and nurses his wounded. It is May 29th before news reaches Boonesborough of the opening shots of the American Revolution at Lexington and Concord the previous April. The colonial dream of the Transylvania Company is dashed by the actions of the revolutionary governments of Virginia and North Carolina, who quickly invalidate Henderson's vast land claims. Boone's more modest claim to 2,000 acres is invalidated as well. Despite this, Boone and most of his compatriots remain loyal to the revolutionary cause. They quickly face the wrath of the British and their Indian allies. In Detroit, British commander Henry Hamilton is determined to drive the Americans out of Kentucky. He offers his Indian allies bounties on American scalps and sends his emissary Simon Girty to encourage the Shawnee to attack the white settlements.
There's a strain of thought that runs from Puritan times onward in the new America, that the wilderness is both a place of redemption that could ennoble an individual, but also a place of danger and savagery that will pull the individual down and destroy all that is good. In the story of Daniel Boone and his great enemy Simon Girty, we see that played out. Girty becomes the antithesis of Boone. He becomes the one who's pulled down, made savage by the wilderness, made more savage, in fact, than the beast of the forest or the Indian warriors that he allies with to fight against his former compatriots. Boone, on the other hand, draws strength from the wilderness, becomes stronger, and from the wilderness experience brings virtues that will become the hallmark of the new America.
Boone returns to the Yadkin Valley to fetch Rebecca and the children, returning to the nearly completed Boonesborough on September 8, 1775. Others follow. A trickle at first, but soon it becomes a flood. By the time of Kentucky statehood in 1792, over 200,000 will have followed in Boone's footsteps up the Wilderness Road through Cumberland Gap.
In July 1776, on a rather languid summer day, Jemima Boone, daughter of Daniel Boone, and her two friends, Fanny and Betsy Calloway, take a canoe and paddle down just perhaps 100 yards from Boonesborough on the Kentucky River. They are accosted by Indians and they are seized and kidnapped, hustled off into the woods.
Boone quickly pursues the kidnappers with only 8 men. For 3 days they trail the Shawnees, finally surprising their camp on July 16th.
One Indian is killed, 2 are hit mortally. One of those killed was the son of Blackfish. Boone rescues the girls and they rush in and they're a great reunion, and Boone says, "Boys, we have saved them. Let us have ourselves a healthy cry."
The story of the rescue of Jemima Boone and Betsy and Fanny Calloway is so attractive to the American audience. It moves from campfire to magazine to novels in a very short period of time, eventually becoming immortalized by James Fenimore Cooper in The Last of the Mohicans.
To the pioneers, 1777 is forever to be known as the Bloody Sevens. To the south of Boone's settlement, Creek and Cherokee raiders sweep through Carter's Valley on the Holston River. Among the dead are David Crockett and his wife, the grandparents of Davy Crockett. From north of the Ohio River, Chief Blackfish leads over 200 Shawnees southward against the American settlements in Kentucky. The embattled rebel government of Virginia can do little to assist Boone's people. Some gunpowder and lead is shipped over the mountains, and young George Rogers Clark is appointed major in command of the Kentucky militia. He has but 121 men to defend 280 settlers. Among those who come with Clark to Kentucky is a young Virginian, Simon Kenton, who has made quite a reputation as a scout in Lord Dunmore's war. He now serves Clark in that same capacity. April 1777 finds him at Boonesborough at just the right moment. Blackfish's Shawnees strike Boonesborough on April 24th. 50 warriors ambush 2 men outside the fort. And when Boone and a dozen compatriots rush out to their rescue, they are cut off. Boone goes down, his ankle shattered by a musket ball. As a warrior moves in to finish him, Kenton appears, clubs the man, and hoisting Boone over his shoulder, makes for the gate amidst a hail of bullets. The Shawnees retreat to await another opportunity. Boonesborough suffers 1 dead and 4 wounded. Boone will be confined to his bed for 6 long weeks, and the ankle will always trouble him. Throughout the spring and deep into the summer, the warriors of Chief Blackfish take a heavy toll on the 3 Kentucky outposts. Cattle are butchered, cornfields burned, and the settlers held virtual captives within their stockade walls. By the time Blackfish withdraws in late July, the settlers are near starvation and barely holding on. In particular, they need salt to preserve the meat that is now their sole source of food. In January 1778, Boone leads 30 men to the lower Blue Licks to procure salt for the settlements. While the men labor, Boone hunts game to feed them. While hunting a few weeks later, Boone is surprised by the Shawnee and captured. He is taken before Chief Blackfish, who commands 120 warriors. Boone, too wise in his 44th year for forlorn hopes, convinces his captors to allow him to talk his men into surrendering rather than fighting. The warriors disarm Boone's men and march them north toward the Ohio River. Many of the young warriors disagree with Blackfish, demanding the right to kill the captives. In a council debate, Blackfish calls on Boone to make a closing argument for the lives of his men, which he does. The vote is 59 for death, 61 for life. To satisfy the losing faction, it is decided that Boone shall run the gauntlet between the assembled warriors.
I set out full speed, first running so near one line that they could not do me much damage, and when they give back, crossed over to the other side, and by that means was likely to pass through without much hurt.
Boone's courage deeply impresses the warriors. He has won them over, first by words and then by action. The next morning, they begin the over 100-mile journey to Blackfish's village.
The generous usage the Indians had promised before was fully complied with, and we proceeded with them as prisoners to Old Chillicothe, the principal Indian town on Little Miami.
Boone is adopted by Blackfish and given the name Sheltowee, or Big Turtle. Ironically, he is to replace the son Blackfish lost at Boone's own hand when he rescued his daughter Jemima.
Boone often said that he loved Blackfish as a father and Blackfish's wife as his mother, that they were considered to be flesh of one flesh, bone of one bone.
I was adopted according to their custom into a family where I became a son and had a great deal of affection for my new parents, brothers, sisters, and friends.
For nearly 5 months, Boone lives as a Shawnee. Then, in early June 1778, he learns of a planned Shawnee attack on Boonesborough. His very real affection for his new Indian family and friends does not overcome his love and loyalty to his white family and friends in Kentucky. Boone makes his escape at dawn, determined to warn the fort or die in the attempt. Despite his wounded ankle, Boone begins a grueling race for home. Outdistancing the Shawnee pursuit, he follows the Little Miami River to the Ohio and back into Kentucky, reaching Boonesborough on June 20th, traveling 160 miles in 4 days. Some of those remaining at the fort suspect that he, like Simon Girty, has gone over to the Indians. His daughter, Jemima, tearfully welcomes him back. Boone finds the fort in disrepair, and many of the settlers departed, including Rebecca, and all but one of the children who have given him up for dead. Boone soon has the fort in a swirl of activity, preparing for the battle to come. He has but 60 men and boys to defend the stockade, and its dozen women and 20 children. On July 18th, he writes to Virginia authorities requesting reinforcements.
Both French and Indians coming against us to the number of near 400, which I expect here in 12 days from this. If men can be sent to us in 5 or 6 weeks, it would be an infinite service as we lay up provisions for a siege.
On the morning of September 7th, 1778, Blackfish appears with his army of 400 Shawnee, supported by warriors from other tribes as well as a company of French-Canadian militia, sent from Detroit by Lieutenant Governor Hamilton. A parley is called, and the head men of each side meet just outside the fort. Pompey, an escaped slave who has long lived among the Shawnee, acts as translator. Blackfish presents Boone with a wampum belt and a letter from Hamilton with an offer of safe conduct to Detroit for Boonesborough's inhabitants. Otherwise, the fort is to be stormed and all inside will die. The choice is his to make. An Indian army over 400 strong appears before Boonesborough on September 7th, 1778. For 2 days they parley. Both Daniel Boone and his adoptive Shawnee father, Blackfish, hoping to avoid bloodshed. Pompey, a black Shawnee, plays a vital role as a translator in these negotiations.
Pompey was a young black man who was captured during the French and Indian War by the Shawnee Indians, taken back to the Indian towns of Chillicothe and lived for 15 to 20 years as essentially a black Shawnee. He becomes fully acculturated. For all practical purposes, he is a black Shawnee warrior.
2 days of parleys achieve nothing. The Indians, sensing that Boone is stalling for time, suddenly seize the Americans. Boone and his companions break free and dash for the fort, musket balls raining about them. The battle for Boonesborough has begun. For 9 days and 9 nights, the battle rages. Inside the fort, every man, woman, and child is pressed into service. Pompey takes particular pleasure in taunting the defenders, but he makes far too conspicuous a target. 5 Boonesborough men claim credit for the shot that kills him. On the night of September 17th, a massive assault is launched. Warriors run up to the walls with torches, attempting to burn the fort. Throughout the night, spits of flame from rifles and muskets intermingle with the screaming of the living, wounded, and dying, bringing all as close to hell as earth can offer. Then it is over. The next morning, the warriors withdraw. In the fort, 2 are killed. 4 are wounded, including both Daniel and Squire Boone. The Indians have lost 37, with many more wounded.
Although the hero of the hour, Boone is soon charged with treason for his surrender and that of the salt boilers by 2 militia rivals. He is tried, acquitted, and even promoted to major as a result of the whole affair. But he's soured by this experience, and within 2 years will leave Boonesborough forever.
Boone returns to North Carolina to find his family. It takes all his powers of persuasion to convince Rebecca to return to Kentucky. he refuses to give up, to turn his back on his dream, despite the heartache, the famine, the war. By now he has invested too much to turn away, nor do they return alone. For throughout the summer of 1779, Boone recruits settlers to go with him. That September, he leads over 100 pioneers through the Cumberland Gap. Numbered among this group is Abraham Lincoln, the grandfather of the future president. Yet, this increasing population further infuriates the Indians north of the Ohio. In response, they step up their raids in 1780. Simon Girty, Boone's old nemesis, leads many of them.
Raiding parties, both white and red, moved across the Ohio River. These were blood feuds. The men knew each other. They knew each other's families. They waged an unrelenting, brutal war on both the settlements in the south and the Indian villages in the north.
In October 1780, Indian warriors surprise Daniel and his brother Ned while they are hunting. Boone escapes, but Ned is killed. The two brothers resemble each other so much that the warriors are certain they have killed Daniel Boone. As proof of their achievement, they decapitate Ned and carry his head to the Indian villages to the north. Even though Lord Cornwallis's army surrenders to General George Washington at Yorktown on October 19, 1781, the war on the frontier hardly slackens. In August 1782, Simon Girty leads a large Indian force south and attacks Bryan's Station north of Boonesborough. Colonel John Todd leads 182 men in pursuit of Girty's retreating force. Daniel Boone, with his 21-year-old son Israel, rides with Todd's militia. Boone worries, for the trail is too easy to follow while the warriors seem to be concealing their number by trotting on each other's tracks. On the Licking River, near the Blue Licks, the Kentuckians overtake Girty's force. Boone, sensing a trap, argues against an attack, but is overruled by the other officers. One man accuses him of cowardice.
Boone, are you a coward or a traitor?
Enraged, Boone reluctantly leads his men forward. Girty springs his trap. Colonel Todd is among the first of over 70 Kentuckians to fall. Boone orders a retreat, but stands his own ground to cover the withdrawal. Israel Boone, refusing to leave his father's side, is hit in the neck by a musket ball. Boone tries to protect his boy's body. The warriors swarm around him, and he must flee. Boone will forever blame himself for Israel's death. He never again can speak the boy's name without weeping. The price of Kentucky and of his own obsession with the land has finally proven too high.
2 darling sons and a brother have I lost by savage hands. Many dark and sleepless nights have I been a companion of owls, an instrument ordained to settle the wilderness.
The Battle of the Blue Licks proves to be the last great Indian raid into Kentucky. The Shawnees, abandoned by their British friends in the treaty ending the Revolutionary War, now move westward, some beyond the Mississippi River. In a short time, Daniel Boone will follow them, for he soon finds himself a stranger in his native land.
Boone found himself completely out of step with the new generation of frontier pioneers that came in after the American Revolution. They had no respect for the pioneers who had come before, who had fought for the land, who had bled for the land. Indeed, to them, the land was a real estate enterprise. It was to be bought and sold. Boone found himself, in fact, now more in tune with his former Indian enemies and their sense of what the land meant.
Boone's land claims have been challenged, and finally, Boone cast his eye westward. And by 1799, at age 64, a time when most men would begin taking an easier life, Boone heads to Missouri, and his response when asked was he needed elbow room.
Although Missouri is Spanish territory in 1799, the royal governor welcomes the famous Daniel Boone. He gives him a large land grant and appoints him commandante, a combination of sheriff and judge, of the Famo Sage district, some 40 miles west of St. Louis.
In many ways, Missouri is Kentucky of old. The land is wild. Boone has numerous run-ins with the Indians.
He is surrounded by family. 3 surviving sons and a daughter all moved nearby. To their amazement, he spends much of his time with several old Shawnees who live in the area.
The irony of the fact that many of his best companions in his last years were the Indians he had once battled for Kentucky was not lost on Boone. He came to understand clearly that he had a stronger community of interest with those bold warriors than he had with the new generation that was moving into the new West he had opened up.
I am sorry to say that I ever killed any Indians, for they have always been kinder to me than the whites.
When the United States makes the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, it invalidates Boone's Spanish land grant. Finally, in 1814, Congress grants Boone 850 acres for his services to the Republic. He sells all the land off piecemeal to satisfy his old Kentucky creditors.
I have paid all my debts, and no one will say when I am gone, Boone was a dishonest man.
In 1813, Boone suffers perhaps the greatest loss of his life, and that is of his wife, Rebecca. Rebecca's in her mid-70s. She's been his wife of 56 years. She's borne him 10 children, and he lays her to rest at Toot Creek in present-day Warren County, Missouri.
In 1784, John Filson published a version of Boone's adventures from his own interviews with Boone entitled The Discovery, Settlement, and Present State of Kentucky. Within 9 months, this was published in Europe, in Paris. Boone was an international celebrity instead of a local hero.
He won the West for the American people, and then, of course, there was no place for him in the new land. But nevertheless, that's why the story caught on, because the new America was searching for heroes and was searching for self-identity. In Daniel Boone, the Jeffersonian man on the frontier, they found their hero, and at the same time, they found themselves.
Daniel Boone dies in his 85th year at dawn on September 26, 1820, in his son Nathan's Famo Sage home. They bury him next to Rebecca in the nearby cemetery. In 1845, Daniel and Rebecca are exhumed and removed to Frankfort, Kentucky, where they are reburied amidst much ceremony. Thousands attend the reburial. Boone's fame has finally led the state he forged with blood to recognize him, but that fame had meant nothing to him.
Nothing embitters my old age like the circulation of absurd stories, that I retire as civilization advances, that I shun white men and seek the Indian. Many heroic actions and chivalrous adventures are related of me, and only exist in regions of fancy. With me, the world has taken great liberties, and yet I have been but a common man.
Well, folks, I certainly hope you enjoyed that. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I can show the remainder of the documentary, which is predominantly Mark A. Baker's portrayal of David Crockett, which is absolutely masterful. And if I get the approval, I'm going to be showing that as part 3 and part 4. Just one big shout out to my brother Bill. You know who you are. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being there for me in the midst of my terminal analog nature. Technology for me is an enemy that I am constantly at odds with. But my brother Bill, he was able to transfer the videos over into a format that I was actually able to use in these videos. So thank you, brother, very much. I love you. And yeah, you got my back, and I appreciate it. Now, when I personally was approached by Carolyn Rain to portray Daniel Boone, I was incredibly humbled. There was no way in the world I thought that I could fill Daniel Boone's moccasins. And so I did a lot of research on Daniel Boone and learned incredible minute details about him. And as an actor, I tried to formulate a character that was Daniel Boone. A lot of people, have made comments. It's like, well, you made a perfect Daniel Boone. I said, well, I am a different person than Boone. I did a lot of the things that he lived and did as a hobby, and I felt very confident in those skills. But when you are portraying an American legend, you have to have your act together. Physically, I trained very, very hard. I was running 8 miles a day cross country, literally in the southeastern Ohio hills. They're like this. Those were paths that I went through the woods, and I ran the woods for months before we got to that point. When I first was approached, I weighed about 195, and by the time that we actually started production, I was down to 175. And so physically it was demanding, and as far as the portrayal of Boone goes, I guess that would be not really psychologically demanding, but it had a particular demand of its own to do the legend justice. I hope that some of you thought that I did. I did the best I could, but like I said, those are some pretty big moccasins to fill. In the wonderful world of film production, filming locations sometimes aren't what they appear. And the bulk of our filming of Kentucky and the Cumberland Gap area was actually filmed in southeastern Ohio at Cantor's Cave 4-H camp in Jackson County, Ohio. And the flora and fauna there, the terrain, everything matched the Cumberland Gap area just beautifully. There are hemlock trees there that are well over 250 years old, and they're everywhere. So that was sort of interesting. And we filmed at Mansker Station in, near Goodlettsville, Tennessee. And that's where all of the fort shots were filmed. And that's very near where Mark A. Baker actually lives. And that's pretty much was his home fort. And there were a few other filming locations that we did where we didn't have the entire cast, but we were able to find specific locations for specific scenes that just fit perfectly for the documentary. I'd like to take a moment to address a couple of the comments that were posted for part one of which was from Casey McClure, which is the site director of the Wilderness Road State Park in Virginia. I had mentioned that we had filmed there and produced documentaries for them for their visitor center. Casey assured me that they are very proudly still showing Native Son Productions of the Wilderness Road documentary, which I was very, very happy to hear. And haven't heard anything from any of the other locations, but hopefully they are as well, to include the Battle of Kings Mountain National Historic Site, the national site for the Cumberland Gap, and also the Blue Licks National Battlefield. One of the most gratifying things about this experience was the ability to meet so many absolutely incredible reenactors and incredible historians. The talking heads that we always see on these style of documentaries, they're real people. They're not AI. And to be able to have dinner with them, to have conversations with them about particular aspects of their area of expertise was absolutely amazing. And to be able to get to know them well is really unique and so far removed from just being a talking head on a video. Not only were they incredibly knowledgeable people, incredibly talented people, but everyone that I was able to meet and spend time with were absolutely wonderful people. One comment I received is if I would do like a show and tell of the clothing and accoutrements that I was wearing in the last video. And I would definitely love to be able to do that, and I have plans on doing that. However, to try to make a very long story as short as I possibly can, I hung up my hat and powder horn thinking I wasn't ever going to reenact again about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And we experienced a house fire. We lost half of everything that we did about 9 years ago. And when that happened, I lost a lot of my reenacting kit. Now, through the cleanup of all of that, we were salvaging everything we could. And we had all kinds of wonderful people volunteer to allow us to store things in all of these locations. So, when I was able to get back on my feet again, I was able to get another home. I gradually was going back and getting these things and, putting them in storage at my own property. Well, a couple of the things that I couldn't find were 2 of my Brown Bess muskets. And so about a year and a half ago, I was, that long of a span, I was going to pick up the last of something that I had stored in a very wet, damp basement. So when I was in there getting ready to pick up the bin that everything was stored in, I happened to look over to my right, and behind a bunch of boards piled in the corner appeared to me to be a musket strap. And so I moved the boards, and lo and behold, there were my 2 Brown Bess muskets, completely encrusted in mold, filth, cobwebs, mildew, and completely 100% encrusted in some of the nastiest, gnarliest rust I've ever seen on any type of firearm. So I retrieved that, and I was just too depressed with it, so I wiped them down, put them in a place to where I could, hopefully eventually work on it. Well, I finally did start working on them. It's been an absolute nightmare, and but I'm getting close to completion on those. But as a result of me not having a lot of the kit that I would want to have as a complete kit to share with you, I'm going to have to be able to procure a few things before I could do a complete loadout video on my 18th century kit. So that one will probably be a little bit of time. But as soon as I can get those items, I will definitely make that video. There was a comment mentioning Mark Baker specifically, and I was able to get a chance to know him in that short period of time. He is an incredibly talented, knowledgeable, and most of all, humble man. I first started reading his articles back, I think it was in when was it? Probably 1986 in Muzzleloader magazine, when he started writing his monthly installments of A Pilgrim's Journey. And I was able to attend the second ever Long Hunter conference, School of the Long Hunter, at Prickett's Fort in West Virginia. And he was the keynote speaker, so I got to meet him there face to face. And it was an incredible deal, and to be able to, years later, be able to actually work with him on the documentary, that was pretty neat. I don't want to get into the whole, hero worshiping thing and stuff like that, but hey, when you admire someone for what they do because they do it so well, and you have the opportunity to meet him and actually spend some time with him and act/reenact with him, that right there was pretty cool. And he's just a man, puts his pants on one leg at a time, just like the rest of us. But that was a pretty nice thing to happen with that, and I'm very glad I was able to experience that. One of the things I love about Mark is the fact that when he first started his first talk at Prickett's Fort at the 2nd Annual School of the Long Hunter, he says, "My name's Mark Baker. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm an high school English teacher." And then he went in from there. And that's the way he literally lived. As far as I know, his greatest achievement that he would want to have as an epitaph is that he was an educator. And I think that would be very, very fitting. He's just that kind of person. Hopefully everything goes well, so you're going to be able to see his half of Boone and Crockett, the Hunter Heroes. Now, before I go any further, I want to give a shout out and a huge thank you to my brothers in Hobbs Company of His Majesty's Independent Company of Rangers. Had it not been for us as a team, none of this participation in the documentaries would have happened. That would be Bill Johnson, Pat Crum, Adam Kovacs, Norm Wydell, Walt Wieland, and Ron Francis. Thank you all so very much, brothers. I love you dearly, and I would love to be able, in some way, shape, or form, to run the woods with all of you again. God bless you all. Now, Boone and Crockett, the Hunter Heroes, is actually the 5th documentary that I was involved with the History Channel. There was a series called Frontier, the Decisive Battles, and I participated in all 4 of those, and the bulk of Hobbs Company participated in the Battle of Kings Mountain, which will probably be the next documentary that I share in this format. One quick little thing that just popped in my head. There was a scene in the second half you just watched to where a Native American pops up and shoots, and Daniel Boone gets hit in the leg and goes down. Well, the individual that took that shot is named Dave Musser. He lives, not too far from me in Ross County, and his Native American reenacting name was Badfish. Well, when Badfish took that shot, he was in Cantor's Cave in Jackson County, Ohio, and when I got hit by that musket ball, I was in Mansker Station in Tennessee. So what an amazing shot. Probably the longest shot that ever found its mark ever made. I just thought that was hilarious. I wanted to share that with you. Well, folks, that's all the commentary I'm going to share today. I would love to be able to produce a standalone video, maybe showing segments of the documentary and doing some commentary. Maybe I'll be able to get a couple of my reenacting buddies to be able to help out with that. I have hundreds and hundreds of still photographs from all the different things that we did in reenacting and with the documentaries, and hopefully I'll be able to formulate that into a very interesting, entertaining video, and also be an excuse, if I can make it happen, to be able to spend some time with my old reenacting buddies. Well, folks, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.